Romania's political framework is a semi-presidential, representative democratic republic where the Prime Minister is the head of government and the President is the head of state. Executive power is exercised by the President of the Republic and the government. Romania has a multi-party system with legislative power vested in the government and the two chambers of parliament, the Chamber of Deputies and the Senate. The judiciary is independent of the executive and the legislature. Romania's 1991 constitution proclaims it a democratic and social republic, deriving its sovereignty from the people. According to the constitution, human dignity, civic rights and freedoms, the unhindered development of human personality, justice, and political pluralism are supreme and guaranteed values. The constitution provides for a president, a parliament, a constitutional court and a separate court system which includes the High Court of Cassation and Justice. The right to vote is granted to all citizens over 18 years of age. Executive branch. The President is elected by popular vote for a maximum of 2 5-year terms. He is head of state, supreme commander of the armed forces and chairperson of the Supreme Council of National Defense. According to the Constitution, he acts as a mediator among the state's power centers and between the state and society. The President nominates the Prime Minister after consultation with the party holding an absolute majority in Parliament or, if there is no such majority, with all the parties in Parliament. Ambiguity in the Constitution of Romania. Article 103 may lead to situations where a coalition of parties obtaining an absolute majority in Parliament, or a party holding a relative majority in Parliament, would be unable to nominate a Prime Minister because the President would refuse the nomination. According to Article 103, unless no such majority exists, interpreted by the President as, unless no such party exists. In the 2008 parliamentary elections, the alliance PSD plus PC won 33.09% of the seats in the Chamber of Deputies and 34.16% of the seats in the Senate. The PNL won 18.57% of the seats in the Chamber of Deputies and 18.74% of the seats in the Senate, giving both parties a majority in the Chamber of Deputies and the Senate. However, the President nominated a member of the PDL which won less than 32.36% of the seats in the Chamber of Deputies and 33.54% of the seats in the Senate. The nominated Prime Minister chooses the other members of the government, and the government and its program must be confirmed by a vote of confidence from Parliament. Legislative branch. The national legislature is a bicameral parliament, consisting of the Chamber of Deputies and the Senate. Members are elected to 4-year terms by universal suffrage in a party-list proportional representation electoral system. Beginning in 2008, members are elected by mixed-member proportional representation. The number of senators and deputies has varied in each legislature, reflecting changes in population. In 2008, there were 137 senatorial seats and 334 seats in the Chamber of Deputies. Of the 334 deputy seats, 18 were held by the ethnic minorities representatives, which would not meet the 5% electoral threshold required for other parties and organizations. Political parties and elections. Romania has a multi-party system, which makes a majority government virtually impossible. Small parliamentary parties have merged with larger ones. Currently, there are 5 parliamentary parties. The main non-parliamentary parties with local representatives are, unlike other former Soviet bloc countries, no party claiming to be the successor of the Communist Party of Romania is a significant player on the political scene. The last presidential election was held on 16 November 2014. The last European parliamentary election was held on the 25th of May 2014. Notes: Elena Basescu rejoined PDL after the exit poll results were published in 2009. Defectors from Democratic Liberal Party. The last legislative election was held on the 9th of December 2012. The last general local election was held on the 10th of June 2012, with a runoff and 2 repeated elections for mayor on the 24th of June. Judicial branch. The Romanian legal system, based on the Napoleonic Code, is inquisitorial. The judiciary is independent, and judges appointed by the president are not removable. The president and other judges of the Supreme Court are appointed for 6-year terms, and may serve consecutive terms. Proceedings are public, except in special circumstances provided for by law. Judicial power is vested in a hierarchical system of courts, culminating with the Supreme Court, an Alta Curte de Justiție, whose judges are appointed by the President on the recommendation of the Superior Council of Magistrates. The Ministry of Justice represents the general interests of society and defends the rule of law and citizens' rights and freedoms. The ministry exercises its power through independent, impartial public prosecutors. Constitutional issues. The Curtea Constitutională judges issues of constitutionality invoked in any court and judges the compliance of laws with the Romanian Constitution. The court, outside the judicial branch, follows the tradition of the French Constitutional Council, with 9 judges serving 9-year, non-renewable terms. Since the 2003 revision of the Constitution, its decisions cannot be overturned by parliamentary majority. Regional institutions. For territorial and administrative purposes, Romania is divided into 41 counties and the city of Bucharest. Each county is governed by an elected council. Local councils and elected mayors of the public authorities in villages and towns. The county council coordinates the activities of village and town councils. The central government appoints a prefect for each county and Bucharest, who represents the government at the local level and directs the ministries and other central agencies at the county level. A prefect may block the action of a local authority if he deems it unlawful or unconstitutional, with the matter then adjudicated by an administrative court. Under legislation enacted in January 1999, local councils control the spending of their allocations from the central government budget and have the authority to raise additional revenue. Locally, although centrally appointed prefects formerly had significant authority over the budget, this is now limited to a review of expenditures to determine their constitutionality. Since 1989, Romania has made progress in institutionalizing democratic principles, civil liberties, and respect for human rights since the Romanian Revolution of 1989. Some present-day Romanian politicians are former members of the Romanian Communist Party, since membership in the party was a requirement for advancement before 1989. Many people joined to get ahead rather than because of ideological conviction. However, the communist past of some Romanian politicians remains controversial. 1990 to 1992, over 200 new political parties sprang up after 1989, most gravitating to leaders rather than programs. All major parties have espoused democracy and market reforms in varying degrees. The largest party by far, the governing National Salvation Front, proposed slow, cautious economic reforms and a social safety net. The main opposition parties, the National Liberal Party and the Christian Democratic National Peasants' Party, favored rapid, sweeping reform, immediate privatization, and a reduction in the role of former Communist Party members. the Communist Party ceased to exist. In the 1990 presidential and legislative elections, the FSN and its presidential candidate Ion Iliescu won with a large majority of the votes. The strongest opposition parties were the Democratic Union of Hungarians in Romania, with 7.23%, and the PNL. After FSN Prime Minister Petre Roman's dismissal a few months before the 1992 general elections, the FSN split in two. President Iliescu's supporters formed a new party, the Democratic National Salvation Front, and Roman's supporters retained the FSN name. The 1992 local, legislative, and presidential elections indicated a political rift between urban centers and the countryside. Rural voters, grateful for the restoration of most agricultural land to farmers but fearful of change, strongly favored President Iliescu and the FDSN. The urban electorate favored the CDR and quicker reform. Iliescu easily won re-election from a field of 5 other candidates, and the FDSN won a plurality in both chambers of parliament, with the CDR, the second largest parliamentary group, reluctant to participate in a national unity coalition. The FDSN formed a government under Prime Minister and economist Nicolae Vacaru with parliamentary support from the nationalist Romanian National Unity Party and Greater Romania Party, and the Socialist Workers' Party. In January 1994, the governing coalition's stability became problematic when the PUNR threatened to withdraw its support unless it received cabinet portfolios. After intense negotiations, 2 PUNR members received cabinet portfolios in the Vacaru government in August. The following month, the incumbent Justice Minister also joined the PUNR. The PRM and the PSM left the coalition in October and December 1995, respectively. The 1996 local elections indicated a major shift in the political orientation of the Romanian electorate, with opposition parties sweeping Bucharest and most of the larger cities in Transylvania and Dobruja. The trend continued in that year's legislative and presidential elections, when the opposition dominated the cities and made strong inroads into rural areas previously dominated by President Iliescu and the PDSR. The opposition campaign emphasized the need to squelch corruption and introduce economic reform. This message resonated with voters, resulting in a victory for the CDR coalition and the election of Emil Constantinescu as president. To secure its electoral majority, the CDR invited Petre Roman's Democratic Party and the UDMR to join the government. Although over the next 4 years Romania had 3 prime ministers, despite internal friction the governing parties preserved the coalition. The coalition lost the first round of presidential elections in November 2000 as a result of popular dissatisfaction with infighting among the parties during the preceding 4 years and the economic hardship brought about by structural reforms. In the second round, Iliescu, running again as the Social Democratic Party candidate, won by a wide margin over extreme nationalist Greater Romania Party candidate Corneliu Vadimciuda. Iliescu appointed Adrian Neste as prime minister. In parliament, the PSD government relied on the support of the UDMR, which did not join the cabinet but negotiated annual packages of legislation and other measures favoring Romania's ethnic Hungarians. Neste, in his 4 years as prime minister, continued the previous government's pro-Western foreign policy. The period was characterized by political stability unprecedented in post-communist Romania and consistent economic growth. Romania joined NATO in spring 2004 and signed an accession treaty to join the EU. However, the PSD government was plagued by allegations of corruption which would be significant factors in its defeat in local and national elections in 2004. In September 2003, the Democratic Party and National Liberal Party formed an electoral alliance, the Justice and Truth Alliance, as a mainstream opposition bloc to the ruling PSD. The alliance agreed, among other measures, to vote as a bloc in parliament and local councils and run common candidates in national and local elections. In October 2003, the country held a referendum on several constitutional amendments deemed necessary for EU accession. The amendments included provisions to allow foreigners to own land in Romania and to change the president's term from 4 to 5 years. In 2004, Traian Băsescu, leader of the Democratic Party, won the presidential election by a narrow margin. Băsescu appointed National Liberal Party leader Călin Popescu-Taraș new prime minister, who headed a government composed of the PNL, PD, UDMR, and the Conservative Party. To secure a parliamentary majority, the coalition government relied on the support of 18 parliamentary seats reserved for ethnic minority representatives. The government's narrow majority in parliament led to calls for early elections. In July 2005, Prime Minister Popescu-Taraș voiced plans to resign, prompting new elections. He then backtracked, noting his and the cabinet's need to focus on relief efforts for summer floods. During its first year, the government was also tested by a successfully resolved hostage crisis involving 3 Romanian journalists kidnapped in Iraq and avian influenza in several parts of the country, transmitted by wild birds migrating from Asia. The government's overriding objective was the accession of Romania to the European Union, and on the 1st of January 2007, Romania became the 26th member of the EU. The government also maintained good relations with the U.S., signing an agreement in December 2005 which would allow U.S. troops to train and serve at several Romanian military facilities. Băsescu and Popescu-Taraș pledged to combat high-level corruption and implement broader reform to modernize sectors such as the judicial system and health care. On the 19th of April 2007, Parliament suspended President Băsescu on charges of unconstitutional conduct. The suspension, passed by a 322 to 108 vote, opened the way for a national referendum on impeachment which failed. 2008 to 2012. The November 2008 parliamentary elections were close, with the Social Democrats winning 33.9% of the vote. President Traian Băsescu's centrist Liberal Democrats taking 32.34%, and the ruling National Liberals receiving 18.6%. The Liberal Democrats and Social Democrats formed a coalition after the election. Former Prime Minister Theodore Stolojan withdrew his candidacy for the premiership, and President Băsescu nominated Emil Boc, president of the Liberal Democrats, as Prime Minister. With the onset of the Great Recession, the Romanian political scene saw tensions between the President and Prime Minister and between the general population, and both tensions escalated with a 2012 political crisis and another attempt to impeach President Băsescu. In the referendum, more than 7.4 million people supported Băsescu's removal from office. However, the Constitutional Court invalidated the referendum because the majority of the population did not vote. Băsescu had called the referendum a coup d'état and asked the public to boycott it. All these events have been heavily criticized by international political figures. The legislative elections of the 9th of December 2012 were seen by the public as an opportunity for change and to oust Basescu. The Social Liberal Union received a large majority in the Chamber of Deputies and the Senate and a record 395 seats. The new Prime Minister, Victor Ponta, quickly formed a government, but the failure to adopt reforms quickly triggered a wave of protests against a government seen as not fulfilling the promises of the 2012 electoral campaign. Two other projects of national interest unleashed more protests. The demonstrations, initially ecological in focus, became anti-government protests. Participation in international organizations. Romania participates in the following international organizations: ACCT, BIS, BSEC, CE, CPLP, EAPC, EBRD, ECE, EEA, EU, FAO, Francophonie, G9, IAEA, IBRD, ICAO, ICCT, ICFDU, ICRM, IFAD, IFC, IFRCS, ILO, IMF, IMO, Inmarsat, Intelsat, Interpol, IOC, IOM, ISO, ITU, LAIA, Latin Union, MONUC, NAM, NATO, NSG, OAS, OPCW, OSCE, PCA, SECI, SEECP, SPSCE, UN, UNCTAD, UNESCO, UNIDO, UNICAUM, UNMIBH, UNMIK, UPU, WCL, WCO, WEU, WFDU, WIPO, WMO, WTOO, WTO, Zanga Committee.